Hey guys, welcome back to another Python video. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about functions. Functions are a crucial part of not just Python, but every programming language out there. Functions are groups of code that perform a task and can make complex code much simpler. You would typically use functions when you're going to repeat code over and over again, instead of just repeating it over and over again, making your program very complex and long. You can write a function, and every time you need to repeat that whatever's in that function, you just call it and it does everything for you. Now, how you would use a function is first you would define the function and then you call the function. To define a function, you put def and then function name. That can be whatever you want. You put the name, open close parentheses, colon, and whatever you want in your function. Now to call the function, let's say I just put a bunch of stuff here as what I want in my function. To call a function, all you have to do is just put the function name with including those parentheses. That's it. That's the very basics of defining a function and calling a function. Now let's create an actual function. Let's create a function that says hi to someone. So we'll do def, and let's call this function hi. Now I want this function to just say to print hi, and also print how are you. Now if I want to call it, say hi, open close parentheses, and it prints hi, and then how are you. Now you notice that these parentheses are both empty. You can actually put something in those parentheses, and the one at the bottom is called an argument, and the one at the top is called a parameter. Now, first let's give examples and I'll explain. So since our program or function is about saying hi to someone, I feel like it'll be pretty appropriate to have someone's name in it. So let's do Mike as name, as someone's name. And Mike, it's a string. It would usually go in the argument, which is at the bottom. And then normally for parameters, you would put variables. Basically, whatever you put in the parameter is whatever variable you put parameter, the value of that variable is whatever is in the argument. So since Mike is someone's name, I'm going to create a variable called name. So what this does is creates a variable called name, and then when you call the function and you put an actual name in here, it's basically equal to saying name equals Mike. So basically name has the value of Mike. So if you put name in your function anywhere, Mike's gonna print out. So I say hi and then I say Mike or just name or how are you name. I print this, you're gonna see it says hi Mike, how are you Mike. So Mike goes in where it says name because Mike is inside the variable name. That's the value of name. You can change it. I can do Gabe for example and it'll stay the same. Hi Gabe, how are you Gabe? That's how the basic of functions work. And as you can see, in this example, we put strings as our arguments. And you can actually put numbers or really anything in. So now we're going to do an example of a number as our parameter and argument. So we're going to create a function that adds two numbers together, and then we're going to print the sum is, and then whatever that sum is. First, let's create a function. Let's call this function add numbers. And then we want to create parameters. And since we need two numbers, so we want to have two parameters. Because if we only had one parameter, then you can't really add, since you can't add with just one number. Let's call these parameters num1, 1, and num2. Let's do that. And then let's create a variable called result, which is just going to be the sum, basically, equals num1 plus num2. I'm going to print the sum is result. That's our function. And now we want to create two new variables and assign them numbers so we can actually make our function work. Let's just do number 1 and make that equal to 9.8 number 2, that's equal to 3.2. I don't know. And then we want to call our function here. To call it, we would say the name, so add numbers. And then for our arguments, we want to put these variables that we just assigned. So we want to do number 1, comma, number 2. Now what this will do, if I print it, the sum is 13.0. So we have our function. Python looks over at first. Python looks at these two variables that we gave values to, 9.8 and 3.2, and then it looks down and sees that we called the function, but instead of num1 and num2, we have number1 and number2, which is basically equal to saying num1 is 9.8, num2 is 3.2. So then it takes the result variable, it's basically equal to 9.8 plus 3.2, and then prints the sum is whatever this result variable came out to be, which is 13.8. Now the function like this works perfectly fine, but normally in a function, we want to get just the result and then print the actual result somewhere else. This is where we would typically use a return statement. So first I'm just going to write the code first, and then I'm going to explain. Okay, so I finished writing the code, and let's explain what's happening. Let's discuss what's happening. So first thing you're probably going to notice as you go down the line is we no longer have print the sum is result. Instead we have return result. Also, if you go further down, instead of just having this, we have result equals. So what a return statement is that it takes the result of your function and calls it back to the caller. Caller being this, what you use to call the function, basically replaces it. Whatever is being returned, in this case, return result. So whatever result is going into this call part. So since we have our numbers now, let's just go through this. Like I said, it looks over the function at first. Two variables created with values of 9.8 and 3.2. And then we're creating another variable and setting equal to add numbers, number 1, number 2, which is the calling of this function. So Python looks up to the function. 9.8 goes in for num1, 3.2 goes for num2. We add them together, and result equals whatever they're added together, which was 13.0. And now this return result part means it's going to return 13.0, which is our result, the value of result. It's going to return it to here, the caller. So it's basically saying result equals 13.8. And then it's going to print the sum is 13.8. So it prints the exact same thing. And notice that could be kind of confusing since we have result here and we also have result here. Let's just change this. Let's do sum. Let's do sum here and change this to sum as well then. If I do this, you'll notice that we get the exact same thing. So it might be a little bit easier to look at it this way. Whatever result became 13.0 in this case, we're returning the value of result, 13.0, to this. And that equals sum. So basically sum equals 13.0. So when you print it, sum is here, it prints 13.0. That's basically how functions work. Now, this function is a function that we created. There's also functions that Python already have created that we use all the time that we might not even think about. Probably the most common one is the print statement. This is a function. But the reason that we don't define this function is because Python already has it defined in their system, which is why we can freely just say print, say whatever we want, and it works, and we don't have to define it. Print isn't the only one. Another example is the len function. And what the len function does, it just gives the length of something. Another function is the sum function, and that just finds the sum of numbers. So for example, if I have a list of 5 numbers and I use the len function, it's going to print out 5 because the length of that list is just 5 numbers. If I do the sum function, it's going to add those numbers together and print that. Now, next video, I'm going to be creating a program that uses functions, if statements, len, and sum. So yeah, make sure to be on the lookout for that. But basically, that's it for today's video. Today's video was just about functions, basics function, defining them, calling them, and the return statement. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.